Now that the David case is officially heading to trial, one question keeps pulling at the center of this story. How did this go on for as long as it did? Why didn't anyone put a permanent stop to it? We know a victim exists. Her name is Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Her family reported her missing and reportedly tried to cut off her contact with David Burke, the artist known as David.
Prosecution, the night before they believe she was killed, April 23rd, the night of the 22nd, there was a big fight and they went back and forth with text messages. She was upset because he was seeing other girls and she was threatening in those text messages to disclose information about him that would get him in trouble and, quote, ruin his career.
Law enforcement even went directly to Burke and told him face to face that Celeste was 13 years old and had been flagged as a runaway, and he allegedly kept the relationship going anyway. Here's what makes this even harder to process. This wasn't completely hidden. Celeste's parents actually signed a travel consent form letting her go to London with Burke in 2024. Her adult sister knew they were together during a Las Vegas trip. Celeste was filmed sitting with Burke's own family in a VIP box at the Fonda Theater in Hollywood. People around her knew. The real question is what they understood about that connection and why none of it ever permanently separated them. So how did this start? According to LAPD Detective Corey Frell's testimony, Burke and Celeste first connected online in August 2022. Burke was 17, Celeste was 11. Both were minors, but an 11-year-old and a 17-year-old are not the same. Court reporting doesn't establish that the relationship turned intense immediately. That shift came later, shortly after Celeste turned 13 and after Burke had turned 18. Detective Frell testified that their messages began referencing intents in late 2023, covering past encounters, potential future ones, and plans to meet in person. Investigators also recovered explicit photographs involving both of them from Burke's phone. Prosecutors are using those messages and images to support the charge of continuous abuse. During the preliminary hearing, the defense pointed to messages where Celeste allegedly claimed to be older than she actually was. Law enforcement eventually told David directly that Celeste was only 13 years old. Despite that, messages pulled during the preliminary hearing showed the two of them discussing missed periods, pregnancy, paternity, and an abortion that took place in early 2024. Detective Frell testified that those messages pointed to Celeste becoming pregnant at 13. David asked if the baby was his. She said yes. What makes it worse is what came next. During that same exchange, David referenced advice his own mother had given him about questioning paternity. And when Celeste asked whether his mother knew about their relationship, David allegedly said she believed intimate life would be the first thing they do when they finally saw each other in person. His mother knew. That detail alone tells you this wasn't completely hidden from the people around him. Later messages confirmed Celeste had an abortion in January 2024. She was trying to rationalize it, telling herself that neither of them was ready to raise a child. She asked David whether the abortion was, in her words, for the best. That question says a lot. She wasn't certain. She was 13, processing a pregnancy and an abortion, and the person she was turning to for reassurance was the same person responsible for the pregnancy. That's not a small thing. By that point, the relationship had taken on a completely different weight. This wasn't just texting or spending time together anymore. It was tied to a pregnancy, a medical decision, and an experience she may have felt they went through together. So when adults later tried to separate them, they weren't interrupting something light or casual. They were trying to pull her away from the person she had connected to one of the most serious moments of her life. Whether or not she fully understood that bond, the messages make clear that David had become central to how she was making sense of everything happening around her. February 2024. That's when Celeste's family reported her missing to the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. Investigators pulled her phone records and found a number linked to David Burke. They called it. David told them he last spoke to Celeste around February 13th or 14th and claimed he had no idea she was a minor or that anyone was looking for her. Riverside County then asked Los Angeles County deputies to do a welfare check at David's residence. They showed up on February 17th and the whole interaction was captured on body camera, footage that was later played at the preliminary hearing. That's when David told deputies, "She told me she was 18. Then he acknowledged, "Everybody's telling me she was 13. Here's why that moment matters so much. Before that welfare check, David could still claim he was misled about her age. After law enforcement looked him in the eye and told him Celeste was 13 years old and had been reported as a runaway, that defense was gone. He knew that's the line. Celeste returned home on February 19th. The intervention worked, at least on the surface. But according to prosecutors, the contact didn't stop. Her parents tried everything. They took her phone away. And that's when prosecutors say David went around them entirely. allegedly paying one of Celeste's junior high classmates $1,000 to deliver a new phone directly to her. Just like that, the communication was back on. The family fought to protect their daughter, but as you're about to see, it wasn't enough. This allegation matters because it shows David actively working around the protective steps Celeste's family had already taken. And then police showed up at his door and told him directly, she's 13 years old. This is the first real checkpoint in the entire story. Up until this moment, everything had stayed inside the family. They knew something was wrong, they reported her missing, they tried to pull her back. But none of that had been enough to keep David out of her life. Now law enforcement had traced his phone number, contacted him personally, and physically shown up at his residence. For the first time, an institution with actual investigative power was standing in the way. But here's the problem. They were only treating it as a missing person case. When Celeste came home, the situation looked resolved. What they never uncovered was the relationship underneath it. The intimate messages, the pregnancy, the abortion, the full picture of what David meant in her life. The system caught the disappearance. It completely missed the relationship driving it. And the way that encounter actually played out makes it even harder to sit with. Deputies arrived at the expensive Hollywood residence where David was staying, searched the property, and spoke with him for several minutes. David told them he had only met Celeste once in person. You lying. Police later testified they left believing he barely knew her. He mentioned he made music, stayed calm, cooperated fully, and was so forthcoming that one deputy actually told him he didn't need to share that much detail. Think about that for a second. Investigators had traced a missing 13-year-old girl directly to this adult man's home, and they were telling him to explain less instead of asking more. And even after deputies confirmed to David that Celeste was 13, there's no publicly reported record that they told him to stop contacting her or warned him to stay away. The visit had one focus, and one focus only. Was she physically inside that residence right now? That question got answered. Everything else got left at the door. When deputies walked away from that Hollywood property, they left without answers. They had the right man, they knew Celeste was 13, and they had every reason to press harder, but they didn't. And the contrast between that calm, routine interaction and what David's messages actually contained is jarring. Because by the time law enforcement showed up on February 17th, things had already gone much further than they realized. The messages between David and Celeste referenced something called Operation Awesome. According to Detective Frell, this wasn't casual conversation. The plan involved Celeste physically leaving her family home and moving in with David, with messages reportedly discussing packing her belongings and coordinating the move. This was happening at the exact same time her family had filed a missing person report and was actively trying to cut off contact. David already knew she was 13. He already knew she'd been flagged as a runaway, and they were still planning this. Then, on March 19, 2024, Celeste was reported missing a second time, 1 month after the welfare check, 1 month after her family thought the situation was handled. It wasn't. That morning, surveillance footage from a store in her neighborhood captured a girl believed to be Celeste, walking down the street in light-colored pants and a dark sweater. The store owner said her family came to him asking if his cameras caught anything. He believed it was her and handed the footage over. In the video, she appeared to be heading toward a dark vehicle parked just outside the camera's frame. He believed she got in. The footage didn't show who was inside or what happened next. Her family reported her missing again that same morning. Deputies returned March 26 for a follow-up, but authorities declined to publicly say what, if anything, came from it. Another checkpoint, another missed opportunity. Based on everything investigators would later piece together, the bigger picture connecting Celeste to David still hadn't been identified. Then just over 2 weeks later, on April 5, 2024, Celeste was reported missing for a third time. Her family called the Riverside County Sheriff's Department that night, and this report would be the last one filed for her that year. What followed wasn't a single welfare check that quietly closed out. Deputies returned to the family's home multiple times, including April 11th, April 19th, and April 20th. The call logs labeled those visits as follow-ups, but the Sheriff's Department refused to explain what investigators found, what steps were taken, or whether anyone had developed new leads on her location. Stop and think about what had accumulated by this point. 3 missing person reports in under 2 months, surveillance footage capturing part of one disappearance, phone records already traced back to David. Deputies had visited the residence where he was staying, and still, authorities hadn't grasped the full scope of what was happening between them. According to prosecutors, after Celeste vanished that April, she started spending serious time with David and eventually traveled with him to Las Vegas, London, and Texas. She was 13 years old. She was in 7th grade. Her brother told NBC Los Angeles that family members knew she had a connection to David and that when she disappeared, she had been planning to go see a movie with him. Now let's talk about London specifically, because this is where it gets even harder to process. Celeste was still a child. She couldn't leave the country with an adult without her family's permission. And according to testimony, her parents actually signed a notarized travel consent form allowing her to make that international trip with David. They signed a document approving it. That signature confirmed they knew she was traveling abroad with him and that they agreed to it. And that detail hits different when you consider what came before it. Her family had already reported her missing multiple times. They were actively trying to bring her home. But now, paperwork was being signed to let her leave the country with the same adult law enforcement had already connected to David. That doesn't mean her family fully understood what was happening between David and Celeste, but it does show how completely the safeguards around her had collapsed. The family system, law enforcement, the adults who had every chance to step in and didn't, all of it failed her. And that's exactly why this kept going as long as it did. Now here's where it gets even more disturbing. NBC Los Angeles reported that Celeste traveled to Texas to meet David's family. This was documented in some of the earlier court filings. And on top of that, she was filmed sitting with members of his family in a VIP box during a concert at the Fonda Theater in Hollywood. That concert footage matters. It proves Celeste wasn't being hidden. She was right there, in his world, around his people. Now, the public record doesn't confirm which relatives were present, how she was introduced, or what each person knew about her age or the nature of the relationship. It doesn't establish that every family member knew what was happening sexually, but the bottom line, she wasn't a secret. Both families, to some degree, knew something was going on. Now let's get into the Las Vegas trip. At the preliminary hearing, prosecutors also put the Las Vegas trip under the microscope. Celeste's adult sister was reportedly in Vegas at the same time and knew David and Celeste were there together. Court messages showed the two had discussed having intimate moments at the International Hotel near the Strip. The sister's knowledge of the trip doesn't prove she saw those private messages, but it does confirm that an adult in Celeste's family was aware they were together. And David wasn't a stranger to that family circle. There were stretches when Celeste was staying with an aunt in Los Angeles, and David reportedly came to that home to pick her up for dates. He also joined the family on a trip to Six Flags Magic Mountain. The defense claimed he attended church with family members on multiple occasions, and while Detective Frell said he couldn't independently confirm the church visits, messages discussing plans to attend services were entered into evidence. Then June 2024 hits, and everything escalates. In a text message that month, David suggested he and Celeste get married the following year. Let that land for a second. She was 13, he was 19. And by that point, deputies had already told him directly that she was 13 years old. He knew exactly who he was with. The marriage talk wasn't just casual conversation. It framed the relationship as serious and permanent, which likely reinforced Celeste's belief that what they had would eventually be legitimate. Later messages also reveal something deeply painful. Celeste was struggling hard emotionally with the abortion. She expressed anger, guilt, and regret, and she placed the blame squarely on David, saying she had ended the pregnancy for him. Those messages make clear the abortion was an ongoing source of conflict between them, and it raises serious questions about what the adults around them may have known. By March 2025, Celeste begins pulling away from David entirely. Messages shown at the hearing revealed Celeste telling David she was fine staying friends online, but she didn't want to keep seeing him in person. She said she wanted more for herself than just intimate moments and hanging out. That boundary attempt didn't end things, though. The messages confirmed the relationship stayed complicated and active well into 2025. Then April 22nd, 2025 hits. Celeste and David had their final blow-up argument, and another woman connected to David was at the center of it. Celeste threatened to go to her father with damaging information about David, and she threatened to end his career entirely. His debut album, Withered, was 3 days from dropping. A European tour was lined up. He had everything to lose. Prosecutors argued those threats gave David a direct motive to silence Celeste before the relationship and the alleged abuse went public. The argument happened roughly 1 day before prosecutors say she was killed. So here's where we are. The welfare check in February 2024. The messages, the pregnancy and abortion, the sexually explicit images, the Tesla, the evidence from the garage, and the fact that multiple people actually knew these two were connected. Here's what makes this case so hard to sit with. This didn't happen completely in the dark. Celeste's family reported her missing. Her parents tried to cut off her contact with David. Law enforcement went directly to his house, and deputies told him point blank that Celeste was 13. She went home. And prosecutors say David kept communicating with her anyway, working around whatever restrictions were put in place. At the same time, members of Celeste's own family knew she was spending time with him, and some of the decisions made around her allowed that contact to continue. That's the part that doesn't get easier the more you look at it. But the evidence tells a different story. There were missing person reports. Her family tried to limit contact. Some members of both families had seen them together, knew about certain trips, had real concerns. That's what makes this harder than just saying everyone knew or no one cared. Her family cared, but whatever they did wasn't enough to pull her completely free. Celeste didn't vanish from sight all at once. She moved through homes, family gatherings, trips, welfare checks, multiple moments where someone could have recognized the full danger. Nobody did. And that's the part that should keep you up at night. Every system that was supposed to protect her had a gap. Her family saw a daughter refusing to let go of someone they were worried about. Law enforcement saw a runaway who'd come back home. The defense even presented messages suggesting Celeste had made conflicting statements about her age. People stepped in, but nobody created a point of no return. The contact was never fully cut. David never truly lost access. The cycle just kept restarting. So here's the real takeaway. You cannot protect a child by standing in front of every bad decision they make. At some point, you have to build them up from the inside. You want your child to have enough confidence, enough self-worth, enough awareness that when someone older tries to isolate them, they don't automatically see that person as the only one who truly understands them. Because sometimes the strongest protection isn't a locked door. It's a child who can look at the person on the other side and already know why they shouldn't open it. And that kind of strength doesn't come overnight. It comes from teaching them they can tell you the truth without feeling like their whole world is about to collapse. That kind of trust doesn't come from rules or lectures. It comes from showing up so consistently that when something feels off, they run toward you instead of away. Because once fear takes over, they start hiding the exact things you most need to know. If this hit home, subscribe for more real conversations about the stories and dynamics that actually matter. See you in the next one.